Hi, everybody. I'm excited to have another session of our focus on innovation and creativity and focusing on the natural food and wellness and health industry. I'm very excited today to have my guest, Jarrod Goldin of Entomo Farms. And I'm gonna just bring it up right now. Has anybody ever consumed crickets for human consumption? So this one you don't want to miss. It's actually pretty exciting. Jarrod's going to share a lot of things about what's going on. And first, I want to tell you a bit about Jarrod. Jarrod won the Canada Clean 50 Entrepreneurship Award for Sustainable Innovation. He's a chiropractor by trade. He teaches at the Chiropractic College. He's been doing that for 25 years. And he's also co-founder and VP of Innovation and Research at Enomo Farms. Sorry if I pronounced it a little off, with Enomo Farms. So Jarrod, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Bruce. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how the heck you get involved in this? Tell us your story. I'm dying to know. How did you get involved in this? I'm very curious, and I think it's so innovative, and I wonder what's behind it.
Yeah, awesome. It certainly wasn't my mother's idea, I can tell you that.
Okay.
But basically, my two brothers had been farming insects for the reptile trade and the bait fishing trade for about 10 years. And in 2014, the United Nations and the Food and Agriculture Organization put out a massive white paper. The title was Edible Insects, Future Prospects for Food and Feed Security. And it basically contemplated that without insects entering the food chain, for us and feed chain for our livestock, the planet was in really serious trouble. And around the same time, there was a gentleman on Shark Tank who had this idea of like dehydrating crickets, pulverizing them into a powder and putting them in a protein bar. And Mark Cuban jumped all over it. He said the future will be in this powder. And he invested in the business. And I called my brothers up and I said, usually it's three ducks. In this case, it was three crickets lined up. And we had them having a knowledge of how to do this. We had the FAO and the United Nations saying we had to do this. And we had a really smart entrepreneur like Mark Cuban who saw the business opportunity in consumer packaged goods, wholesale, etc. So we raised some money and we started North America's first human-grade insect farm. That was 8 years ago, and really the rest is really wonderful history.
Well. So in the past, was these crickets not for human consumption, or are you the innovator that introduced it for human consumption?
No, because out east in Thailand, for example, there are thousands of insect farms or cricket farms, but the North American precedent is essentially that they can't be wild harvested. They have to be grown for human consumption.
Okay.
And like any food processing, there are laws in place that ensure health and safety for the people eating that food. And, we've aspired because, we've had products in Loblaw and other national retailers like that, where they have a certain expectation around safety, something called GFSI or BRC certification, which are food safety certs. And it's funny because it's an expensive and long process. And when we met with the auditors, they said, usually they go to food facilities to make sure they're keeping bugs out of their facilities.
That's so
they're
true.
coming to ours, where our goal is to keep bugs inside the facility. So
interesting. Well, you want to keep
curves.
alien bugs out, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things, I think it's called othering, where there's this assumption that bugs are more dirty than raw meat or raw chicken. But I can assure you, you're far more likely to get sick from raw meat or chicken that isn't processed properly than you are from a bug that may be running around your house.
Interesting. It's interesting you say that, because I can't get my head wrapped around eating crickets yet. I mean, I think about it. Maybe 100 years ago we couldn't eat mussels. Maybe it's all relative. But how do you? I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels like that. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think I remember the first time I went for sushi. People in my family were like, "Are you crazy? It's raw fish. You're going to get sick." Now there's a sushi restaurant on every corner. The other great irony, Bruce, is that I think, and I'll get to your question, it's fascinating that, people will take their children to a fast food restaurant for a treat or buy them pop or a Twinkie or candy, all food that we know causes heart disease, causes obesity, causes diabetes, that the refined sugar is a precursor to cancer. But no one sees that as icky. In fact, we call them treats. But our food, which research is showing is incredibly healthy, may help to control diabetes, obesity, colorectal cancer, like all kinds, probiotics that feed the prebiotics that feed probiotics in the gut biome that reduce cardiovascular disease. That is seen as icky because of the culture for us here in North America. Our way around that for now is that we convert these crickets into a powder, and the powder can be used to bake with. So you could have a banana bread or a muffin or a pancake, and you may not even know that the cricket powder is in there, and get all this incredible fiber, protein, highly bioavailable macro and micronutrients. And that's the baby step, like the California roll had no raw fish in it, and it got people into the sushi restaurants, and then they tried salmon or they tried tuna, and maybe they got more bold and tried some other stuff that looked weird, but these are stepping stones.
Is it, like, I'm just curious, the flavor, is there flavor to this, or in the powder, like if let's say put into a smoothie, does it come in berry flavor? Is that
not yet, but it can. If you make it in a smoothie and you mix it with peanut butter, that will cut the flavor. It's a very earthy, nutty, kind of like mushroom-esque, if you will, flavor, but that has a lot to do with how we dehydrate the crickets. We use oven roasting, but if we use freeze drying or spray drying, those would neutralize that kind of earthy disposition. So, we're in the first pitch of the first inning of a doubleheader here, and we've got lots to do and learn.
I'm curious because I am a finance person. I'm curious. R&D is a lot of that in this because a lot of food innovators sometimes don't even think about that.
Yeah,
well, from a financial perspective, you got some good.
Yeah, no, for me, it's a driving principle because I think our use case scenario, we used to think it would be all around the sustainability piece and that people would, be interested in this because of the sustainability values. But we've learned that we're going to need a lot more than that. So I think the health benefits are what is going to drive the category. And like I said, we just completed an amazing research study on B12 because it's so very high in B12 with a group of researchers in Denmark. We're about to embark on a study with Tufts University and the HNRCA looking at colorectal cancer in mice. An amazing study came out on the prebiotic fiber and how it feeds probiotics specifically associated with reducing heart disease. So, and then we have, we get calls from people like seniors with dentures that can't chew meat. They have a milk intolerance. They're withering away because they can't get good protein into them, and they're baking with the powder. They're having smoothies with the powder, and their family are telling us it's bringing them back to life, if you will. So I think yes, R&D is for me obviously the focus, given my background as a chiropractor, as a scientist. And no, there's never enough money or funding, in my opinion, for this. We should have far more than we do, and we can maybe get into another tiny little interesting element just with the pandemic that we've just been through. What if the next pandemic affects birds? What if the avian bird flu wiped out every chicken in the world in a couple of weeks? So given the resiliency of an animal like a cricket, I feel government should consider hedging space all over their countries, big, huge warehouses, so that if we had a pandemic that affected cows or hogs or chicken or all of them, and our protein food sources were devastated, they could call on us, tap us on the shoulder. We could ramp up production in these facilities all over the country. And within a few weeks, we could have this very rich food protein source available to fill the gap and perhaps, entrench itself and last forever. So, there's so much to talk about, Bruce. And I think given the pandemic we've experienced and seeing what these things can do, I think there's an interesting conversation in and of itself to have there.
Well, that's the sustainability piece, right? That's the sustainability. I want to talk
about
and
food security.
Exactly. I want to talk too about, we can share some learnings that you've had And to do this, obviously, you had to raise financing. Can you talk about that? How that went? The entrepreneur. Talk about the entrepreneur journey, because one of the things that I deal with my clients and I do quite a bit of work in the natural food space and the wellness space, and I'm very passionate about it. And we all are. That's why you're in it. You're passionate.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your journey in the fundraising? What you've learned? What would you do differently? I want to share that.
Yeah, sure. So I think, like so many startups like ours, in the beginning, it's really the people that know you well, like friends and family. And if you're lucky enough to have a connection, somebody who's worked really hard and made a bunch of money and understands what you're doing and really sees the long-term vision, they're a conscious investor. They're not looking for a 10 times ROI in 2 years. They understand this will take time. And we were lucky enough to find that person. And he, he took $50,000 and invested in us for a small piece of our business, and it got us going, and it enabled us to kind of prove that we could do this. And then fast forward a few years, Maple Leaf Food was at the table, and they were looking at alternative proteins, and they're heavily invested in the plant food segment. But Michael McCain met with us. He understood that what we were doing may have real legs one day, and they came on as a minority investor.
Wow.
They have members on our board. He's been absolutely fantastic to us. The board members have been. Maple Leaf Foods as a resource has been. And then most recently, we have an investor from Korea, an incredibly wonderful person and family. They have a massive, massive family fund. And they too want to do something that's important and something that's meaningful and something that can hopefully leave the planet better off than it was before they made this investment. So they are all capitalists, and they all hope that we can make a bunch of dough together one day, no doubt about it. But we can do it in a way that's good for people and good for the planet. And we can leave a legacy business for our children, or just something that they can look back on and be proud of these investments that they made in us, and what we chose to do with their money. And that's the story. In terms of the learning lesson, is never give up. There were nights where we thought tomorrow was the last day, and the last minute somebody stepped up, and we never apologized, in a sense, for what we were doing, and that it would take time, and that this was not going to be an overnight success. That we were determined, and that we wouldn't give up, because having traveled to places like Madagascar, where we have a farm there, we're either going to make this our problem, or we're going to make it our children's problem, and certainly our grandchildren's problem. So we decided that we didn't want to burden our kids or our grandkids with a bigger problem than they needed to have, and that we were gonna do something about it.
Wow. And what's the for the company at Enomo Farms? What is there an end game? Like, are you going to take it public? Are these things under consideration, or what?
Sure.
Just
Yeah,
curious,
I think for us, assuming that we don't, that we're not going to, leave this business to our children, and that we went down the capital equities route and equity financing, that our two exit strategies would either be to go public or to be bought out. And, I would love to be the first publicly traded insect company on a national stock exchange. I mean,
wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. And,
Incredible.
we're basically a wholesaler. We produce this powder, we sell it all over the world, and people make pet food, livestock feed, protein bars, crackers, chips, all kinds of different stuff. The pet food segment is definitely growing the fastest. We have a customer in California who now has a product in Petco. It's selling like crazy. And then the byproduct, which is the frass, which is insect poop, if you will, is a fantastic fertilizer. And there is now a Canadian Tire, a national chain here in Canada, is selling cricket frass manure under their brand Gulf Green. And that's super exciting. So every part of the bug is used, even the poop. It's a great fertilizer. And the end game is to have insect fertilizer be a premier category. It's organic, it's safe. You can use it on the grass next to the lake up north, indoors. It's non-toxic. And the food itself, like I said to a journalist the other day, what water is to liquid, insects are to food.
Isn't that something, eh? So they're part of your product is a raw material inside in other people's products. Is that how
yeah,
it works?
mostly, yes, mostly that's what it is.
As a consumer, if I want to, can I go buy protein powder at Lob? I wasn't sure. As a consumer, like, let's say I'm interested in consuming, where do I go? What do I do? From a consumer, I guess the protein powder is a consumer product.
Yes.
How do
Well,
I?
of course, like everything, you can go to Amazon. Our products are on Amazon, and there's all
Okay.
kinds of great products there. We have a brand called Actually Foods that's now available in Loblaw, and they're cheese puffs. They're super healthy cheese puffs loaded with protein. There's 3
Wow.
different flavors. And yeah, for most people, it's about using the powder in their baked goods, in their smoothies, chilies, pizza crust pies.
It's like almost like a flour.
It is
Same way
almost like
yeah.
a flour. We call it a powder because people, the flour kind of devalues the nutritional value
Powder.
proposition, but
And
highly bioavailable nutrients, super healthy, and really easy to work with in baking and cooking. And
could they go to
we
your
were
website?
working with a group that's going to make a beer, a cricket powder beer.
Incredible.
Yeah,
It's like the world is endless. Like, could they go on your website and it will direct them to where they can
absolutely.
buy? So the website is obviously www.
.entomofarms.com.
Wow. Something, this has been extremely insightful. Extremely
Thank
insightful.
you, Bruce. Thanks so
And-
much for having me. It's
no,
fun to
Jarrod,
talk
I
about.
really appreciate, these, we keep these short and sweet, and it's certainly, I knew nothing, because we don't know as
Yes,
people. And I find it very
absolutely.
insightful, and I appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you
coming.
for your interest, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jarrod. Have a wonderful day.
You
Take
too,
care.
Bruce.
Bye-bye.